ahead and get us started.
Cool.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Welcome to our next webinar in the series of webinars about AI in the modern workplace. So today we're going to be talking about different tools which are available in Microsoft 365 ecosystem AI tools. And we will not just talk about only tools as is, but we'll also focus on quite a few use cases on how do we use those AI features in our day-to-day work, in our modern work. So we try to make this session quite engaging. It's going to be packed of live demos. So yeah, I hope we will all have a lot of fun. So today I'm joined by James, who is a senior consultant in WM Reply, and he's also AI evangelist inside the office and outside of work as well. And as we go, I would like to remind you to post your questions into the Q&A chat. Don't hold back till the very end of the webinar. We'll try to answer those questions again as we go in parallel. But yeah, let's keep this question coming. If we have no time and we doesn't manage to cover all the questions that we have in the chat today, we will absolutely do a follow-up after the webinar, so all the questions will be answered. So with this being said, I would like to hand over to James. James, over to you.
Thanks, Anton. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Obviously, we're going to be talking a lot about AI today, and it's basically it's on everybody's tip of their tongue, right? It's the hot topic for today, AI and Copilot, right? So let's take a look at why we're looking specifically at AI within the modern workplace, right? So let's take a look at a few numbers here, right? 64% of people struggle to find time and energy to get their work done. I'm actually sort of a little surprised that that number is so low. Pretty much everyone you talk to these days, every time you say hi, they say, how's it going? And they say, well, I'm busy and I'm in meetings, and and it's just they're working extra hours. That balance, that work-life balance, is going off, right? So definitely people need some help in their day-to-day activities. We're also speaking of meetings, in a lot of meetings, part of the 3 times as we were back in February in the number of meetings, partially influenced by the pandemic, of course, but still now we're in a hybrid way of working and still in quite a lot more meetings than we ever used to be. As it turns out, in the survey, you see about 70% of people would be willingly delegate as much as possible of their workloads to AI, and so that's very interesting. It's actually higher than the number of people struggling to find their work to get done, and also a leader is twice as likely to consider AI as providing value by boosting productivity rather than cutting headcount. And now this is very important because people get a little bit afraid, a little bit cautious about AI, about the possibility that it might replace them or replace their job. And really what we're seeing is that it's a bit more about another tool in your arsenal, right? It's about reducing some of the tedium that's in your day-to-day work, right? I'm sure we've all had experience of trying to format a Word document and get all the fonts consistent and all the titles consistent, and even just doing some research. In our day-to-day jobs, there's lots of stuff where an AI Copilot, an assistant, could really help, right? So Microsoft obviously is investing into AI. The screen here is a lot of text on the screen, but this just gives you a sense of some of the items that are being introduced with mostly Copilot, you can see, right? So Copilot for GitHub, for Office 365, for security. There's other flavors of Copilot. It might be called something else like Azure OpenAI Services. There's even a few things that aren't on here, right? There's Copilot that just got released to Windows 11 a few weeks ago. It's coming for OneDrive, for example. But today, we're going to focus a little bit more on these 4 elements here. So we're going to do some demos in Microsoft 365 Copilot. We're going to talk about Bing a little bit, and we're going to switch over for Ant to do some demos within the Power Platform and OpenAI services. Now, just to touch on these tools specifically, Bing and Copilot, and how they kind of compare. Right, so currently active today, Bing Chat has now been enhanced with OpenAI's GPT-4 model, right? So that means when you're going and doing your searching on the web, you're now able to interact in a natural language and get more actual answers to what you're looking for. It turns out that there's about 50% of all searches, whether it's Bing or Google, go unanswered, and it's largely because shocker, people aren't actually trying to go and find a list of results of web pages to then go and find the information they're looking for. They just want answers, right? And so if you're able to chat to something like Bing Chat and find answers to something and have a conversation, it's more natural, you're getting better results, all that kind of great stuff. Moving over into the enterprise, Bing Chat Enterprise adds an extra line in here with commercial data protection. Now, this is really quite key. Right, this is extra security in place so that your data, you can send your corporate data, your private data to Bing Chat, but no data is leaked. It's also not used to train the language models, right, in behind it. So it's a nice secure way to get that same capability of that AI-powered searching and chatting, but to have it reason against information that's in the large language model, also out on the internet, and with your corporate data. So consider this as kind of the entry level, if you will. Bing Chat Enterprise is included in quite a few of the Microsoft licenses, also available as a standalone license as well. And then if we move around, move all the way to the right, sorry, to the Copilot, the deluxe version, if you will, this is a separate license add-on. And you can see it has all the capabilities I've already talked about, right? The natural language interface, the large language model, all that great stuff, and adds a bunch of extra stuff, right? Enterprise security, privacy, and compliance. It basically has access to the same content that you do. So meaning in your Microsoft 365 tenant, all your documents, all that kind of stuff, all stored in your Microsoft 365 applications, familiar apps you're used to using, Outlook, Teams, Word, etc. And there's the underlying graph that's always been there that always has that sort of content and context. And now you can kind of like stitch it all together with Copilot. And that looks a bit like this. Okay. So I've already mentioned all of these elements here. You've got the large language model, you've got the graph, the access to your data, the context for it, the intelligent search that's already there within Microsoft. You've got all the applications that you're used to using, plus the internet, and you can access all of that in a natural language. So this is really, people talk about this as being really sort of revolutionary or transformative, right? And so this is really quite a new way of doing things, right? It's not just doing this, a better way of doing the same things. It's kind of a whole new way of doing things, right? One of my favorite statistics, I'm going to get into some demos in a minute here, but another number for you, and this number varies depending on where you look, but roughly most office workers only use about 10 to 13% of the functionality of any given office application. So if you think about that in your own personal use, right, you might be really good at making pivot tables and charts in Excel, but not so good at creating animations in a PowerPoint deck, for example, right? And if you think about how anytime you don't know how to do something, you've got to go Google and find the steps to try and figure out how to use the application. It's really an interesting world that we'll transition to now with Copilot, where you can just ask it or tell it what you want it to do. It knows all the features, all the buttons, all the tools, all the ways of doing things within those applications. You don't need to go Google them anymore, and the tool can just do that for you, which is pretty cool. All right, so today, like I said, we're going to do a few demos for you. We're going to look at how Copilot can act as a personal assistant and make your sort of day-to-day life a bit easier. We're going to show a demo of that within Teams. We're going to look at content creation within Word and Outlook. There's content creation within Excel, with PowerPoint. You can have it create whole slide decks, that kind of thing, but we're going to show Word and Outlook today. And some methods of improving the content that does get generated through those tools we're going to look at as well. And then when I'm done those, I'm going to hand it back over to Anton, and he's going to take us through some no-code and low-code development, plus the whole capability of plugins within Azure AI, and how Copilot can help streamline the research process and kind of and supplement your knowledge management using bots. Okay, so let's go into the demo. So I'm going to do these live in this session. I do have backup videos recorded just in case we run into any technical glitches, but bear with me as I bring up our first demo here, which is this guy here. Okay, so the context for this, the use case for this first demo, right? Okay, so I am looking at a Teams chat, or the recap specifically of a meeting that happened previously. Now, the use case for this, with Copilot, you can actually turn it on as long as the transcription is turned on in a live meeting, not a live event that we're running today, but in a regular Teams meeting. This example is a little bit more where I've missed a meeting. Or in this specific example, I wasn't even invited to this meeting. I found about this meeting after the fact and realized that it would have been really handy for me to join. Now, the traditional methods to find information about this meeting would have been to go watch the recording, right? In this case, it's a short demo meeting of 10 minutes, but if you're watching a half hour, an hour meeting, you got to set time aside from that, or I'd have to read through the transcript, and I'd really have to sort of pay attention and see what was talked about, and were there any tasks assigned to me. So this is really where the power of Copilot can come in as a really cool assistant for you. And you can see on the right-hand side here, I've been chatting to it already and doing some stuff in here. And I'm going to show you some of this, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit just to make the screen size a little easier to read. So I'm going to start by saying what was discussed in this meeting, right? We'll talk about prompt engineering in a little bit. Right now, I'm just sort of asking natural questions, right? I could have asked what was discussed in this meeting, what was talked about, give me a summary of this meeting. There's a variety of different ways that you can ask it a question. And up comes a list of topics that Copilot has found in this meeting. Every time you do this, Copilot and AI tools tend to generate a different sort of set of results. So you can even ask the same question again, you get slightly different results, or a variation of that question, in case you want it to just sort of see the power of what the tool can do. But you can see they talked about Power Platform Process Mining, what it is, and there's a list of items on there. You can also see that it suggested a few things in here. I can do a recap of the meeting, or I can list action items. I can also just keep typing questions. I'm actually going to do the list action items. I'm going to see what items were talked about that required a bit of a follow-up or were assigned to different people. I'm actually kind of curious if these guys talked about anything that I might need to do in this meeting. And I can see a whole list of action items that Copilot has generated for me. So this is pretty cool, right? I don't have to watch an hour meeting and wait for that 1 minute where they talked about, a specific action item for Mac or David or whoever, or me for that matter. And as it turns out, I don't have any action items assigned to me, which is cool. Nothing for me to do, but it's an easy way for me to ask Copilot rather than watching the video or bugging my teammates, right? I would have to maybe ping Mac or Chris and say, hey, anything for me to do, anything I need to follow up on. Another quick variation on this, I could say, am I mentioned in this meeting? You can do variations of this to say if, is a client name mentioned, a project name mentioned, any of that kind of stuff, and it can comb through the information in the transcript and find that out for you. And no, I was not actually mentioned in this meeting. So not only do I not have any action items, I wasn't even talked about. Sometimes when I've done this in the past, it does show who was mentioned. It'll show a list. I could also ask it that as well. But these are some very powerful tools with Copilot in the Teams interface. Now, in the future, what's cool is that this will be available within surfaced within Outlook. Okay, so in Outlook, what's coming is you'll have the ability to follow a meeting. So if you got two meetings, if a meeting come in, you have a clash, you know you can't make it, rather than saying no or decline or maybe, you can say follow, and it will let the meeting organizer know that they should turn on the transcript. First of all, you need the transcript available in order to use Copilot, so they could turn that on for you. And when that transcript is available and the meeting's done, it'll come back through into Outlook and allow you to interact and ask questions and provide you a summary right within Outlook, which is pretty neat. Okay, so now let's move on to second demo. We're going to go into Word here for some content generation with Copilot. Okay, so this is pretty neat. So I'm just in a blank Word document, right? I've just opened a new Word document, and right off the bat, you can actually see this little icon right here, Draft with Copilot, right? And over in the menu, there's a Copilot option up here. So if I click this, it opens up this this little window where I can describe what I want to do and try to generate some content. Now, I mentioned prompt engineering a few minutes ago, and we're not going to sort of do a deep dive into what that means, but a simplified way to think of prompt engineering is to think of the way that you talk to an AI tool or to Copilot, right? And I just like to think of it as talking to your coworker. So I have a coworker online with me in this meeting. Of course, Anton is with me. And if I went over to Anton and I asked him to write me a statement of work, Anton, what would your response be to that kind of question?
James, easy. I can do this, but it would be nice to understand, okay, who is the client, what kind of work we are delivering, and what's the cost. Without this, I just can't write a meaningful thing.
Right. Exactly, right? So Anton has a bunch of questions to follow up on, right? So I've told it to generate the content in the background here just to sort of speed up the process, as it does take it a few minutes. But basically, you really need that extra level of detail, or more specifically, the specifics of what you want, right? It wouldn't be all that fair of me to go up to Anton and just expect him to write a statement of work. Same isn't really fair of the tool. It's going to need to know who's it, the people, it's the parties it's between, budget, timelines, all that kind of stuff. Now, it's gone and generated something for me with that simple prompt that I put in there, write me a statement of work, because it has access to the large language model, and that may know what a statement of work is. Also has access to all the content in my M365 tenant, and I happen to work on quite a few statements of work as my job, and so it's probably combed through those and tried to figure something out. Right now, you can see it's making up stuff, right? It's making up the companies, it's making up the project. It has no idea kind of what we're talking about, and it's put in a few sections here. It's probably not all that useful, but it does give me a sense of what's in a statement of work, or what could be in a statement of work, right? It's even made up a budget in here. So I'm just going to delete this. We're going to start again, and I'm just going to go grab, I'll just copy this in here, just to speed up the process. I'm going to copy in a prompt this time that has a bit more information to it, and you can see the difference. Okay, so this time, write a statement of work, but including executive summary. It's going to be from WM Reply to Contoso for an intranet project and a budget of 100K. All right, so we're going to give that a few minutes here. And basically what I'm doing is I'm still talking to it in kind of natural language, but I'm just giving it more details. And that's kind of where the prompt engineering kind of stuff comes in, where you kind of get better at trying to figure out what kind of questions to ask, what level of detail to add, and all that sort of thing to really make more effective prompts. But largely, it's mostly intuitive, except that there are some very complex prompt engineering things you can get into, but there's whole courses on those, on how to do that kind of thing. But for interacting with something like Word, you can just give it more detail, and you should get more detail out of it, right? So it's still generating here, and we'll just give it a minute, and I might stop it depending on the time that we have available for this session. But just to give you an idea of what it's doing, We'll scroll down a little bit. You can see it's created an executive summary. It's prepared from WM Reply. It's for Contoso. It's the internet project. All right, so now it's not making up as much stuff. That term often comes up, the term hallucination or hallucinating is often a term used with AI where it tries to be very helpful, but if it doesn't know what you're talking about, it hallucinates, it makes stuff up. In this case, it's made a lot less up because I've provided it more information, right? Everything AI generates, you're still going to want to go in and do an edit, do an editorial review. You're going to want to move stuff around, but it does give you a really interesting starting point for the content. And you can see it's a pretty extensive executive summary. It's got the proposed solution. It's even broken down the budget for me, right? It's got the timeline. It's projecting about 12 weeks. I didn't actually tell it sort of how long I expected it to go. Interestingly enough, in the past when I've done this, it also sets the date in the past. This time it didn't. Again, each time you generate these, they're a little bit different. It's added a scope. It's added deliverables. It's actually generated quite a lot. In some cases, I've had this generate just the executive summary, and each time you do this, it's a little bit different. And now it's going into roles and responsibilities, and it's just making this up because obviously I haven't told it anything about the team and that sort of stuff. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of work to get this into shape. But it's really interesting that it's creating already 3 pages of content from a 1-paragraph prompt, right? And what I'm going to do, let's just see how close it is to being done here. It's still going, assumptions and constraints. I'm going to do one last prompt here. Oh, it's got payment terms. It's doing quite a lot in this particular generation, which is kind of cool. It's adding in quite a few sections. But if I wanted to include specific sections or maybe include specific dates, and this sometimes happens, sometimes it went wrong. Try again in a few moments. This Copilot is still in early access. And once it's generated about 4 or 5 pages of content, you can see how large this Word document is already. It can sometimes run into a little bit of a problem. So I'm just going to select all of that and delete it. And I probably won't let this fully generate, but I want it to, that's not the full prompt. 1 second. Might help if I copy paste correctly. There we go. Same prompt as before with Contoso, budget, etc. But now I'm giving it a date and the specific sections I want it to include, like overview, high-level plan, a costing table, assumptions and terms and conditions, right? So I'm just basically, one of the core things that I want to illustrate at this point is that sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you write one prompt, the answer it spits out is just what you need, and it's great, and that can happen. But more often than not, you need to sort of massage it or regenerate it and change your prompt to be more specific and more about what you actually want it to be, right? And so now it's doing my executive summary. It's got the dates in here, what I asked for. It's got the overview. It's got a high-level plan, and it's going to probably generate, the other sections that I asked it to generate, right? Okay, so that's content creation. Now I'm going to do another quick example in Outlook, but before I do, one quick note on what's coming in Word. There's a few things that you can be able to do. One is generate content like this, but then have it add it to your company template, for example, right? Say, here's my template, here's the content, merge it together, and boom, puts it all in. All nicely formatted, the right fonts and sizes and all that kind of great stuff. Also, there'd be an integration with Designer. If anyone's played with Designer, Designer is a tool Microsoft put out that can allow you to generate some images and content for things like PowerPoint and that kind of thing. You'll be able to do that right within Word, within that prompt that I was just showing you. That you can say, generate me an image or a banner or that sort of stuff. And you can use stock imagery, or you can even upload your own images and then have the AI tool produce a nice like collage or banner or whatever it is that you want right within Word, which is pretty cool. Okay, that's going to sit there and generate for a little bit. We're not going to wait for that to finish, but it seems like it's doing what I asked it to do. High-level plan. It's got a costing table in here. It's kind of, guessed and made up some numbers for the cost of the project. It's putting in assumptions, and it's almost done. It's there we go. It's done the terms and conditions, and it's finished. And I can click keep, and there's my document. 4 pages of content from a 1-paragraph prompt. It's pretty cool. All right. Another variation of content creation. This time I'm going to pretend I'm writing an email a couple of weeks ago to prepare for this webinar. So I'm going to send an email to Anton. I'm just going to call this webinar. And you can see there's a type / in here to draft with Copilot. There's also a Copilot menu up in the top here, right? So if I type and hit /, give it a second, and there it is. And I should get that same prompt. There we go. And I'm just going to copy in my prompt here. I'm basically going to ask it to draft an email about the AI webinar. I wanted to mention that we need to discuss what we want to demo, what we need to plan out for 45 minutes, also asking it to actually suggest an agenda. And I'm just going to click generate and see what it does for me. Right now, the generation on this is pretty quick, but it's creating an email, a few paragraphs of text, not 4 or 5 pages of text like the Word document was. And once this is finished, I'll have a little crafted email. Now, again, you'll still need to read through it. You still want to personalize it. You'll still want to edit it for accuracy and all that kind of stuff. And any second now, there we go. All right, so hello, Anton, blah, blah, blah. Hope it finds you well. It's got all the details that I've asked. It's talking about the webinar. It's actually broken down an agenda of introduction, overview, and demo, et cetera, et cetera. It's got time slots in here that hopefully should add up to 45 minutes. And then best regards, James Mace. Okay, so that seems pretty cool.
Yeah, James. So I think it's pretty cool. What we hear from a few customers is that often the content which is generated by AI tools like ChatGPT or maybe Copilot sounds a little bit formal. So is there any way to make it sound like, well, pretty much like me, or a little bit more casual, depending on who you're sending it to?
Yeah, good question, Anton. And yeah, there's some things you can do now, and there's actually something that's coming that's really cool as well. So in the current tools, once you've generated this email, there's a little generation option here. Now, it's interesting that this is built into the tool, because you can also do this with prompt engineering, what I mentioned before, right? Prompt engineering, you can get very complex, and I could write the prompt to say, write it in this tone, use this kind of language, write it as a certain persona. You can do all that sort of stuff. But Microsoft has built into the content generation here a way to just sort of tweak some of this, some of the most asked for features, if you will, right from within the email. So as Anton was just asking, wants this email to be a bit more casual, and actually let's shorten it up a little bit so I can set these and say regenerate and have it recreate that draft, goes through the same sort of steps, and it should recreate a new email. Should generally still keep the same things I asked for, right? We're still talking about an AI webinar, a 45-minute time frame, an agenda I asked it to suggest, but it should change the language a little bit. And yeah, and there we are, right? And it's also asked it to make it a little bit shorter. It's a tiny bit shorter. Sentences are a bit shorter, so there we go. In the future, what I'm really excited for, if you think about the Copilot having access to all the emails that you've ever written, it should know, or should be able to sort of figure out your kind of language, right? Like I don't write an email, hi Anton, and I don't sign them best. I sign mine, thanks, for example, right? In these tool sets, what's coming will be a sound like me option, and then I'm really hoping that that'll sort of tweak some of the language in here, and the way you sign emails and the way you write them to sort of match how you write emails. So that's quite cool.
Is it going to pick up on my my grammar mistakes to sound exactly like me?
Yeah, that's also a very good question, and there's sort of two sides to this coin. It's a very interesting thing. On one hand, if you're let's say your first language is English and Copilot is writing content in English, you might want it to sound like you so that it tweaks the text and produces content as you've written it. But if, let's say, English is your second language, or you're not sure about how you're drafting some of your content, you may actually want Copilot to be suggesting some changes or fixes or improvements to how you're writing it. And so you maybe want to go with the initial draft and a little less of the sounds like me option. So there's sort of two use cases there, and both are equally valid. So great. Okay, so I think that's the demos I have for us today. I'm going to hand this over to Anton to do the next couple of demos.
Oh, thanks, James. Let me try to share my screen and let me know if you can see it. Thumbs up. Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, so I think what James ran us through was a really great example of almost consumer-grade AI tools where you don't need any specific knowledge or any specific education to go and just use them. Basically, grab up the shelf because Microsoft had done all the hard work behind the scenes, so you just can grab them and use them straight away. Well, maybe apart from prompt engineering, which again, we are usually speaking with our clients on how to improve the result, the quality basically of the results. But also another set of tools which Microsoft is providing within the AI kind of suite is they are dedicated for developers, so they're almost like a very powerful development tools. And if we take a look at the slide here, so it kind of shows the broad picture of Microsoft investment into AI, apart from Copilot. So you'll see they'll have the Copilot family, which is in Power Platform, in Dynamics, in M365, but also in tools like GitHub. And it also has the separate OpenAI branch, which is like really custom, really extensible set of components. So we will not go today into the GitHub Copilot because that's purely for developers. But what I would like to show very quickly today is the capabilities of Copilot in Power Platform. Because Power Platform today is the platform of choice for the no-code, low-code development. And there are some Copilot features which are also available within Power Platform today, or they're getting available tomorrow. So what I'm sharing is my Power Platform, Power Apps start page, which is a little bit. So what it has currently still in preview, it has this describe to create feature where your citizen developers or your app makers, they should be able to create apps just from a natural language prompt. It also gives a few examples, but let's say I would like to create an app which is designed to manage regular inspections of broadcasting hardware. So what it's doing when I click go, again, it is going to suggest me a data model, a data scheme based on my request. Okay, so if I'm creating an app to manage hardware, what's the data behind the scenes could look like? This is the very first suggestion. So it has the hardware name, the latest inspection date, with inspection type, and inspection results, and some notes. So what I can do from here, I can ask it to change columns, or I can ask it to add columns, like add, let's say, area column, and make it a choice. Okay, so the tool will understand from your prompt that what you actually want to do is you would like to add one more column. So we should change the underlying data model and based on your request. So yeah, it added area. So okay, I didn't specify what area I wanted to see here, what kind of options should I see in choice, because maybe for me it's Northwest London or Southwest London, but it just followed the best guess based on my prompt. So this is where the prompt engineering is quite important. And if I could create an app, it will actually go and create a first draft of a Canvas app, which will have capabilities of managing items from Dataverse and using this data model as a model behind it. What also is coming, so we will see this will be generated now. What also is coming is a Copilot component within Power Apps, which will be a premium component, but you should be able to have the Copilot chat within an app. So your users, instead of like filtering through the data or searching for data, they should be asked questions like, hey, can you give me the latest 3 failed inspections? And Copilot will go to the Dataverse, interrogate the table, and actually give you those 3 records. So what I have now is actually the Canvas app and the Copilot interface on the right, so I can do changes with my to my Canvas app. I can add buttons, I can add another screens. So it actually removing this complexity from app makers and making sure that they can actually create applications even faster now without specific technology knowledge. So this is one of the examples what we will be able to do very shortly with AI for the low-code, no-code platforms. Also, GitHub for Copilot. We're not covering this today, but this is something that we are using in WM. So within our development team, we're piloting this today, aiming to roll out to everyone at the end of the year. And then another capability which I wanted to talk to you about today is actually research. And this is a story from my very recent experience where basically we were starting a project with a customer in absolutely new vertical for me, which is very specific. And I never worked with this vertical before. So let's give an example. And while it will generate an answer, I can talk you through this. So for example, this is how it could look like. I'm starting a new project with a client who are a global importer of specialty coffee. They're also roasting coffee. They're selling it into coffee shops and chains across the UK. They're leasing coffee brewing equipment to clients. And the main objective of the project is to build client management software. So what is important for me specifically? So I gave it background, and I would like to ask, I needed to understand the end-to-end process of managing clients in coffee business, starting from client acquisition up to maintaining long-term relationship. And can you present the process step by step and indicate documents issued at each stage? Instead of asking ChatGPT or Bing Chat Enterprise, and the reason I'm actually asking Bing Chat Enterprise is because I can be very confident that if I ask it the question here, I can even mention client name. Because it's the enterprise version, it will not get exposed anywhere. It will not be used to retrain the model. So instead of doing this, I could go to multiple sites. I could try and understand the process. I could collect those bits and pieces. And then in different places, I would like to go and understand, okay, what's the typical document management process is for those specific steps. And honestly, this would take me a very good part of my day, at least to get the very first impression. Instead, when I'm asking Bing Chat Enterprise, I can have my very first draft, which again, it looks quite accurate, but it also gives me a references to the website where it picked up this information from, so I can go and validate if some bits look suspicious. So it presents me the very first draft of this process very quickly. And if I'm being more specific with my question, or I can say, okay, in terms of the client acquisition, I see that one of the documents is a sales proposal. Okay, and can you explain the process of internal approval of sales proposal, so then I can have this knowledge to use on a project. So I think it's a very good example of how those AI assistants can help you conduct your research in a new industry, in a new area, much faster than before. And then I think the last one for me today would be the knowledge management scenario. And I think this is knowledge management. I think you can definitely use Copilot to manage knowledge in the organization, but also when you planning how to scale this to organization of tens of hundreds of thousands of people, you start to think about the license cost and the cost implication, and probably there may be something more lightweight and other solutions and other tools which will actually bring this intelligence to your knowledge management process. And one of the options is actually to use Azure Cognitive Search, OpenAI endpoints, OpenAI capabilities and teams. So one of the examples that we've created recently is a chatbot, which is available to any employee in Teams, whether it's mobile device or whether it's a desktop. And then imagine, so you have your HR policy database sitting as a bunch of documents. So what you can do, you can actually put all those documents into your Azure, say in the blob storage. You can feed them into the cognitive search indexer, so it will index this data with semantic search. And then you can have your GPT-4 engine to actually summarize the search results. And this bot will be a multi-turn type of conversational bot, where you can not just fire one question, which is matching the keywords specifically, but you can actually have a conversation with the bot about a specific case. So one of the use cases is that imagine that your organization have quite a few manuals to follow in a specific case, and you may have a lot of standard operating procedures, which again will be specific to very to some scenarios that your employees may face. So the old traditional way would be go and search for those documents, scan through the document to find a specific kind of policy, and then maybe go and search into other document because that may be a combination of factors. Go scan this document, also pick up bits and pieces there. But instead, you can actually ask a AI assistant to do the search for you and to present the result in a kind of step-by-step way. So let's click to the demo. So let's imagine I have the HR assistant bot. I was just checking in the morning what happens if I show at work drunk, and it gave me some results from a safety at work policies. But then you can also ask questions which are kind of more relevant. Okay, so how long can I be off sick and still receive a sick pay? So what it does at this point of time, it actually picks up your question, then it goes into the Azure Cognitive Search. It does search and it summarizes results which are coming back. So during sickness absence, employees will receive discretionary sick pay from company at the normal rate pay till 10 business days in any of the 12-month period. I can also ask, okay, for example, so what happens after 10 or 28 days of sickness? And then again, so it should have the context of what's going on here, what kind of conversation are we having. We'll go and search your company policies, come back with results, and then GPT-4 engine will summarize those results and present back to you. And you can be very flexible, you can make a very bespoke bot, which you can include images, you can include video content in here. And yeah, you can make it actually fit the purpose for your specific organization. So this was a very quick example of how we can tackle knowledge management issues with AI assistants at work today. So I think this concludes my demo. Do we have any questions so far? Carla, do you have any questions in the chat?
Nothing has popped through, but we do have a couple that were sent in advance. So the first one we have is, does Bing Chat Enterprise have access to your data?
I think, James, this is probably for you.
Sure. Yeah. So Bing Chat Enterprise doesn't have access to your data natively, right? It doesn't have access to your M365 data, stuff stored in your Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, all of that kind of stuff. It's basically just has access to internet data and large language model. The difference between regular sort of Bing Chat and Bing Chat Enterprise is that you can upload a document into the Bing Chat Enterprise to then have it do additional reasoning and additional research and additional, queries using the AI tools. But that content that you upload to it doesn't get leaked anywhere, doesn't get used to train the model, for example. It's just used within the context of that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's what we've seen recently with images, right? So I think you can upload image now to try and analyze it. I think another interesting use case which I've seen is that if you work in Edge, in Microsoft Edge, you can open Bing Chat as a sidebar. And then if you open PDF from your document, Bing, so not Bing Chat, so first of all, Edge has access to the content of this PDF. And in this specific case only, Bing Chat Enterprise has access to the text in PDF as well. So you can actually ask it a question about PDF. So, but yeah, it's not, I don't think it's access to your data within your tenant. This is just data that you opened in the browser, which may be from your laptop.
Awesome. All right, we have one more. How does Copilot know when to select a specific plugin?
Yeah, I think James mentioned plugins. I think we may even do a separate webinar on plugins, maybe towards the end of this year, maybe beginning of next year. But well, basically the plugins are the former Teams message extensions, which will be used to access the different endpoints and present results back to your Copilot. So the way that Microsoft Copilot will actually know which plugin to call, because imagine you can have multiple plugins deployed into a tenant, it will actually match your prompt to the description of the plugin, and it will use GPT-4 capabilities to understand which one of them is actually matching your prompt in the best way. And therefore, it will select the plugin, it will select a method like a function from a plugin, and then it will query your third-party systems like your ServiceNow or your Workday or anything very bespoke. It will get results back and present them as in the Copilot chat as a card or as a free text. Basically, yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. That's all the questions we have.
That's brilliant. Could we go to the last slide? So thanks everyone for joining. If you still have any questions based on what we showed today, feel free to reach out if you want to understand more, see more demos, or just basically understand the use cases of using Copilot and what the other AI tools are capable of doing, which we didn't cover in the session today. So yeah, scan the QR code and feel free to get in chat. We are pretty happy to have a conversation. And this leads us to the thank you slide. So thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.